Hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the Chartmetric session. It's one of my favorite platforms personally. And another platform that I use quite a lot when I was working a major label is Luminate. And we have two members from the Luminate team here to talk about the music trends that they saw using their data over the last year. So I would love to welcome Joywyn and Grant to the stage.
Thanks, Christine. Hey, everyone. Hope everyone's doing okay. Checking if Grant is around.
Yep, there he is.
Awesome. All right, so I'm just going to pull up my screen. Just need 1 second here. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yep, we can see it.
Fantastic. So I have a second screen here, so don't mind me looking slightly to my left. So just a quick intro. We guys are Luminate. My name is Joywyn. I am a research director on the team. I'm joined by one of our team members, Grant, today. We'll be talking a little bit about what's really happened in the music space, a little bit of a snapshot from our year-end report, which we release every year in collaboration with Billboard. And then we'll just have a quick snapshot of it. If you want to take a look at the full year-end report, it's available for free download on our website, so feel free to check that out. Yeah, and without any further ado, we can dive right in. So just to do a quick round of intros, my name is Joywyn Daniel. I'm a research director on the team based in Toronto. Really started my research career a little over a decade ago in India, moved to Canada about 4 to 5 years ago, been in the entertainment space for about 6 years now. And yeah, really enjoy working in the music space. I did do a little bit of a transition, started my career in more traditional research with consumer goods and services, then moved over to broader entertainment with sports, and then, now I'm in music. And I'm also joined today by Grant Gregory, who's a research manager on the team based out of LA. Fun fact, Grant was an attendee of Measure of Music last year. We hired Grant directly out of Measure of Music. Just a good little success story there. And Grant, go ahead. I think you can do the intro.
Yeah, so I actually had spent 6 years as a political consultant and pollster. And I wanted to make a transition to music just because that world can be a little exhausting. And I'll talk a little bit about this later, but I came to this conference and was able to network through this conference to get in front of people at Luminate. So it's good, but I didn't transition from political consulting over here.
Awesome. Just a quick snapshot of the agenda of what we'll be going through today. So we'll take a quick look at who Luminate is. Some of you might be hearing about us for the first time. We look at some consumption stats from 2022. No conference or webinar in 2023 is complete without a spotlight on Gen Z. So we'll be taking a look at Gen Z and what they're doing when it comes to music-related behavior. And then we'll take a look at superfans. There's a lot of conversations that typically tend to happen when it comes to superfans in the music space. We had a really fun exercise, really interesting and fascinating exercise where we sort of segmented the US music listener market, which Grant will walk us through later. And we'll have a little bit of time right at the end for questions. All right, so diving right in. So who is Luminate? So historically, we are known as the official data provider to Billboard. So all of our data powers the Billboard charts in the US, Canada, and globally. We've gone through a few rebrandings. We used to be called Nielsen SoundScan. We were MRC Data for a little while, but for now we settled on Luminate. We do have a few different business units within the company. Our core business is tracking consumption when it comes to music, so streaming, any sort of physical sales across the globe. That's something we keep an eye on, track, and it is the gold standard since it supplies all of the data to the Billboard charts. We also have a consumer insights vertical, consumer insights, audience intelligence, fan research. I know there are a few different synonyms that people tend to use, but essentially survey-based data, like going that extra layer, going that one step further when it comes to understanding why fans are behaving a certain way. Consumption data does give an insight into what is being consumed at what levels and what volumes, but really understanding the whys behind the whats. Research helps, fill that gap. So I'm part of the research team. Grant is part of the research team. We'll take a little look at how research typically works. Won't be in too much detail, but just a quick sort of overview. We do have wide global coverage. We are covering 49 countries when it comes to a combination of research and consumption. And on the next slide, we'll take a look at what coverage we have and what we've tracked in 2022. So when it comes to consumption, on-demand audio and video streams, it was a big year, really crossed the 5 trillion mark for the first time since we started tracking any sort of streaming data. And we tracked about 200 plus countries globally in 2022. So it's really broadened and really wide in terms of our coverage. We work with nearly 500 daily data providers when it comes to physical sales, when it comes to streaming. So a really wide network and probably the only people in the world who have access to this level of data. And that's on the consumption side. Consumer insights is more of the research side of things. So we conduct our research in 30 plus countries globally. A Music 360 research offering is the flagship offering that we offer to people and to our clients. When it comes to comprehensive understanding of the music landscape, Music 360 really dives into fan-related music behavior, what genres people are listening to, how much time they're spending when it comes to listening to music, what formats are they using. So anything under the sun when it comes to music-related behavior, we track and conduct surveys as part of our Music 360 solution. We also have a few hyper-focused research offerings. One is our artist and genre tracker. I will speak to that in a minute or so. So essentially, understanding fan bases of artists and how they are perceived by their fans, and then how fans engage with these artists. We've been tracking this for a little over a year and a half now, and we do have a read into about 400 plus artists, and that list continues to grow. And we also keep a track on major genres in the US, so that about 25 plus genres and 50 plus subgenres, really understanding behavior of genre fans. How do rock fans look? What is their profile? How do they differ from, say, K-pop fans or hip-hop fans? Are they spending more money? Are they spending more time listening to music? So things of that nature is really what research aims to answer. And in terms of just global coverage, a little more of a visual look on the countries that we do cover. So as I mentioned, we do have insights into 30 plus countries when it comes to our research, core being the US and Canada, but we also do have coverage and overviews into emerging markets, regions in LATAM and APAC, pretty much anywhere in the globe where streaming or music is a big industry. We do have insights into all of those. And when it comes to brands or people that we work with all of the major labels, as Christine mentioned earlier. We work with major DSPs, we work with major publications, major brands, anyone who's looking to get an insight or an overview into the music industry or music data. I think we are probably the first people that you think of. So really the gold standard for data when it comes to consumption, and the research has been very helpful in terms of consulting clients and brands into how they can embed themselves into the music space. All right, so before we get into the trends, I do want to take a couple of minutes to really explain how research works. So research can be a complex sort of concept to grasp, but I want to take a minute or so just a stripped down, bare bones version of how research works. Now, the questions that we aim to answer using research, we have a few examples on here. So when it comes to someone who's interested in the rock genre, who is a rock fan, what is the typical age group? What is the gender split? How much are their income levels? How much time are they spending listening to music? What formats are they using? So things of that nature, we aim to answer using our research. Now, these types of questions are typically answered in our standard research products, but clients also come to us with very custom requests. In scenarios like those, we build very custom solutions for them. So this is a quick sort of snapshot of the types of questions we answer. And when it comes to the research process itself, this is a very, very simple sort of framework of how research works. So if there are any researchers in the room, I think you'll know there's a lot that goes behind the scenes. But to simply explain it in 5 steps, what we essentially do is, number one, we design a survey that's aiming to answer some of the questions that we looked at in the previous slide. Once that survey is designed, we program it into a digital platform, which really enables us to distribute that survey across the audiences that we're interested in. And then we have people take the survey. So we want to make sure we have a good representation, a balanced representation of all audiences. When it comes to getting a read on say, the US national population, we want to make sure not all of our survey respondents are millennials or Gen X or boomers. We want to make sure it's a good balance. It's fully representative of a population and of all the ethnicities within a certain demographic or a certain geography. Once we collect all of this data, we clean it up. We want to make sure everything's authentic, everything is reliable. And once that is done, we tabulate the data, analyze the results, and deliver it to our client. So that's a quick sort of 1-minute spiel on how research works. There's obviously a lot that goes behind it. But for someone who's not super research savvy, this is a good sort of way to understand how research works. All right, and what topic areas do we cover? So music is definitely our core business. So we do have insight into everything that really happens when it comes to music-related engagement and fan behavior. But we also look at podcasts, we look at film and TV. Gaming is one that has a really interesting crossover with music, at least in the past decade or so. We also look into sports and books. Now, if you look at the table right at the bottom half of the slide, think of it as a funnel. So Entertainment 365 is one of our research solutions, which looks to get an understanding into any sort of entertainment activities that fans engage in. So anything that people are doing when they're not sleeping or when they're not working can count as entertainment. So we look at activities like music listenership, TV viewing, people who even cook for leisure, things of that nature. I think that can be termed or clubbed into an entertainment sort of bracket. We aim to get insights into those. And going one step lower, we do a few industry deep dives. Music 360 is our flagship research offering. So gets a full 360-degree view, as the name goes, into the music landscape in terms of just what levels of music listenership is happening in a certain geography or a certain country, and going down a step further into what genres are people listening to, what genres are people fans of, how much time do they spend? How much money do they spend? What is the level of live concert attendance? So anything when it comes to music-related engagement, we cover under our Music 360 offering. Podcast 360, as the name goes, is a replica of Music 360, but targeted at the podcasting space. So what type of engagement happens with podcasts? Are people watching more video podcasts and audio podcasts? What genres of podcasts are they interested in? So that's essentially what Podcast 360 looks into. Film Series 360, again, as the name goes, you might have figured out by now, looking at more the film and series landscape. And then Web3 plus gaming. This is something that we did for the first time last year. So there are a lot of industry stakeholders thought leaders who talk about Web3 gaming, but what is really a fan perspective? What is really a consumer perspective when it comes to the space? That's something we conducted research in last year. And then if you go right to the bottom, this is very hyper-focused. So I talked about this a little earlier. So artist and genre tracker is one of our solutions where we ask consumers or music fans about their favorite artists. Like, do they even know who a Dua Lipa is? Have they even heard of Taylor Swift? And then how much do they like them? What sort of words would they use to describe them? Is someone like a Dua Lipa a trendsetter or a role model? What level of agreement and what perceptions do artists have amongst their fans? Those are the kinds of things that we track in our artist and genre tracker. And then we have 2 more solutions, podcast tracker, TV film tracker, again, just trying to keep like an ongoing read and look into both of these spaces. All right, I know there's a lot of research information, but now I think we can jump right into some of the trends that we looked at in 2022. So number 1 is streaming. So looking at 2022 versus 2021, it was really the first time we hit that 5 trillion threshold. Year-on-year growth was at about a 25% from 2021. So growing up to 5.3 trillion from 4.2 trillion. This is on-demand streams for both video and audio. And if you look at the bottom half of your screen, we break that out for audio and video. So if you see video is growing at a slightly stronger rate, a slightly faster rate, was this audio, but both of these categories are growing. And these are global metrics. On the next slide, we'll look at what's really happening in the US. So the US is a really interesting proposition, especially because it is one of the markets where streaming is very close to hitting like peak maturity, right? So when you look at growth rates here, when we look at on-demand streams, that it's at around that 12% range, while globally we're seeing 25%. So it is growing at a slower rate, but it is still growing.
I also want to hop in. Growth in consumption doesn't necessarily equate in terms of growth of revenue, because as populations continue to adopt premium DSP services, the return per unit is going to be higher. So 12% growth in volume doesn't necessarily mean that is one-to-one in revenue growth.
Yep. Really good point. So premium versus free, that those are like slightly different when it comes to streaming, and how revenue is a fallout of that. And then speaking of sales, digital sales did drop from 2021 to 2022. So about a 25% drop, streaming really coming to the forefront in the US. And two really interesting stats here on the right. One is vinyl. So vinyl is growing at 4% rate from 2021, hitting that 43 million mark. A really important factor when it comes to vinyl is just that there are challenges and limitations when it comes to production. So when we look at growth, if there is enough capacity to produce the demand or meet the demand of fans, I'm sure we would be seeing much faster growth rates.
It was 25%. It was 25% the year beforehand, but then supply bottlenecks.
Exactly. So hopefully in 2023, there are rumors, or there is news of Nashville sort of trying to plug that gap with more production plants coming up. So it's a waiting game now, essentially. And then the last stat that I want to talk about here is cassettes. So 28% is a big number. You might have seen a lot of your favorite artists put audio cassettes up for sale on their websites. It's a really interesting phenomenon where physical formats are being sold, but when it comes to getting a read on, are people actually using those formats to listen to music? We'll cover that in a minute or so, but yeah, we do have some really interesting insights there. And then I do want to cover catalog. So people who are not familiar with the term catalog, so catalog music is essentially anything that is 18 months or older. And we do see that consumption of older music is seeing an upward trend. So when you compare 2021 to 2022, we see that there was almost a 13% volume change. So people are listening to older music. A few different factors contribute to this. Number one, older audiences are adopting streaming platforms at a much higher level. So we are getting close to that 100% sort of streaming capabilities within the US. And then younger audiences are also finding older music through a variety of sources. First thing that pops to mind, a lot of you might know, was Kate Bush and the explosion of Kate Bush coming out of the sync with Stranger Things. We're also seeing a lot of music from The Last of Us this year, where newer audiences are discovering older music. So a few different things contributing to this, but what we are seeing is catalog is sort of gaining that year-on-year share versus current music. All right, so speaking of consumption, streaming is obviously the core sort of driver when it comes to consumption. But one thing which we did look at in our year-end report is some blockbuster albums, some blockbuster artists, and what really contributed to their growth and their success. So what we're looking at here are Bad Bunny, Beyonce, Taylor Swift. And we're looking at the first week since their release, what is the consumption figures and where the consumption came from. So when you look at Bad Bunny, about 96% of consumption came from streaming. So almost exclusively via digital format. So the small little yellow slides that you see is digital album sales. So nearly all of the first week of consumption for Bad Bunny came from streaming. And when you look at Beyonce, it's a bit more evenly spread out. We see about 43% coming from streaming. The little orange slice there are vinyl sales. We also see CD sales sort of taking a slice of the pie there, and then digital albums as well. So when you look at Beyonce, she's, I think, in between Bad Bunny and Taylor Swift. And then Taylor Swift, I think it's a fantastic case study to look at in terms of how an artist can really monetize a super engaged fan base. What we see here is this big little slice in orange where we see vinyl sales. So a little over 36% of consumption or first week equivalents for Taylor Swift came from vinyl sales of her album. All right. Now, moving into how genre fans are consuming music, it's again a very interesting phenomenon, and this is something that research aims to answer as to how different groups of fans are engaging with their favorite genres. One stat which we find is that Latin fans are 30% more likely to watch short music video clips, and think of a TikTok, think of Instagram Reels. So the visual aspect, I think historically for Latin music has been more appealing to fans. So we do see a 30% sort of over-index there. When it comes to hip hop fans, they are 23% more likely to stream audio songs online. So we do see a digital sort of adoption, but more on the audio side. And pop fans look most like the US average. And these over-indices I just talked about are comparing Latin fans to the average music listener in the US. So that really sort of helps us understand where these groups of fans are differing in terms of their behavior. All right. And then taking a global look, I did say we cover about 30 plus markets with our research, and a few fascinating sort of insights that we found as part of this was how different regions engage with music. So when we look at the Middle East, about 65% of music listeners claim to have watched short music video clips on social sites. Now, this is the highest of any region that we conducted research in. And then when we look at Europe, we see that music listeners still love their share of radio. So 83% of music listeners in Europe claim to listen to radio at least once a month. And this is, again, the highest of any of the regions that we conducted research in. And coming down to the APAC region, now APAC and LATAM are two regions where data is almost freely available. So APAC is one where streaming of music videos, especially on YouTube, I think it's super high. 77% of music listeners claim to have streamed music videos online, while in the LATAM region, streaming of audio is more prominent. So quick snapshot of how different regions in the world, even though we look at the music industry as a whole, are engaging with music via different formats. All right, now I did say we'll talk about vinyl a bit, and this is one big stat that came out of our US Music 360 research. A lot of passionate fans and a lot of opinions on this particular stat, but the crux of the matter here is that 50% of vinyl buyers, or people who claim to have bought a vinyl record in the past 12 months, only 50% of them own a record player. So what are the other 50% doing? Are they even listening to vinyl? So it's a really interesting stat, and without research, we wouldn't have this level of insight into a phenomenon of this nature. And again, this sort of really drives that narrative home that vinyl is seen as more than just a listening format. Fans see this as much. Fans see this as a way to support their artists. Fans see this as a way to drive their artists up the Billboard charts. So a few different things contributing to this, and a lot of this is driven by Gen Z. We do see that vinyl buyers are 22% more likely to be Gen Z when compared to the average music listener. And then we also see that vinyl buyers are more engaged with music overall. They spend more than twice as much as the average music listener. So anyone who's a vinyl buyer, you can be almost sure that they are spending significantly more money on music overall. All right. And then getting into Gen Z, I would like to pass over to Grant, who's going to walk us through a couple of different sections here.
So I also just want to touch on the vinyl stuff for a second. In addition to approximately half of them owning, a record player, they're also way more likely to pay for a digital service provider. So this is not a supplement. This is a complement. Vinyl is a complementary good to exhibit your music identity to people, not a supplement as a listening format. And I think people in the music industry intuitively know this, but given the reaction from the public on this stat, I think that it kind of needs to be reiterated that vinyl buyers are your super fans. They are not, there are some Gen X older men who are still buying vinyl, but at the end of the day, vinyl is a format that young people are using to express their music identity. It works as wall art. You know, it serves so many functions beyond just being a listening format. So, and we can move on to the Gen Z stuff. So Gen Z is a fun topic because obviously my background's in political consulting, where the median voter is some 55-year-old somewhere, and in music, obviously Gen Z is a powerhouse. They are the change makers. They are the trendsetters. They spend 10% more money on music monthly, which is really impressive if you account for their disposable income relative to other age brackets. They spend 19% more time with music on a weekly basis, and they also yearn for merchandise, like you said, vinyl. There's also a component, there's a social signaling component among Gen Z where they really want to be on top of the trends. They express a desire to be the first among their friends to know what's going on with music and stay in touch with pop culture. So music is really, a lot of music trends are really driven by Gen Z, which is a little bit of a change for me. They're also very digital and very video based. So they're 61% more likely to discover short video, music on short video. They're 30% more likely to discover music on streaming services, and they're 25% more likely to discover new music on social media, on websites and apps. This was a little bit surprising to me because I'm a millennial, so I kind of assumed that after Reels took over that Snapchat had kind of fizzled out, but that's 100% not the case. Every time I cut data open with looking at Gen Z or looking at these kind of prominent audiences that are driving change in the music industry, Snapchat is super prominent. It pops everywhere. And obviously TikTok, in terms of volume, in terms of the actual share of people who use it, TikTok is obviously a clear factor in this, but at the end of the day, short video is hugely important across all Gen Z audiences. And again, Gen Z are more engaged than most other audiences, so that's relevant for us in the music industry. They're more interested in playing video games as far as what they express interest in. They're obviously more interested in watching short form video. And then, you know, obviously they're less interested in listening to the radio. And the video game thing is interesting because, and we'll get into this in the next slide, is this kind of, they occupy a lot of virtual spaces. They're at the forefront of Web 3.0. They're at the forefront of the metaverse. So they're 59% more aware, or 59% aware of the metaverse and also interested in it. And they're 42% more likely to be gamers than Gen Pop. And they're 30% more interested in memes as NFTs, but also to this point about the gaming, which obviously isn't too surprising. The most consumers are interested in digital artwork or music-based NFTs. Gen Z is a little bit more, their top interest as far as NFT types go also includes video games, in addition to the other two, digital artwork and music. So I think that's relevant. Important to know.
Yeah, I love that stat on memes. Just goes to say how unique Gen Z really is compared to
they do like their memes. They're good at it too.
Yeah.
And then, you know, again, as they're 90% of gaming Gen Zers use a gaming console, which is really impressive because every other audience, the mobile gaming is their top gaming format, but for Gen Z, they are dedicated. They have these consoles in their homes, and they spend a lot of time playing video games too. They're 50% more likely to use a VR headset and for video games. And they're 69% more likely to be interested in sandbox games. And I find that very interesting because sandbox games are kind of the pre-metaverse, right? So it's just kind of re-emphasizing how engaged in virtual environments Gen Z are. And this kind of also touches on live streaming as well. We saw that when the pandemic started kind of mitigating, or as it stopped being top of mind for people, everyone was interested in going back to concerts. So interest in live events went up. But with Gen Z, that happened simultaneously with a slight growth in live stream virtual attendance. So they don't think of these things again as supplements to one another. There's the virtual spaces which they live in for music events, and then there's also the live events that they also want to go to. So they're really just a virtual audience, and you need to engage them, you need to treat a virtual space differently than you would a live space. These are not the same things.
Yep, and I think this ties in nicely with the stat we had on vinyl earlier, where Gen Z aren't really looking to substitute one format for the other. They like different platforms, different formats fulfill different needs for them. So really curious to see how this continues to grow over the next few years.
And then somebody had a comment here about the segmentation. The Spotify did the music listening thing. We actually did, well, we didn't do the same thing because I don't know their methodological approach, but we did also segment the US consumer base by their music listening habits. We ended up with 5 different unique segments. Each of one provides their own unique value. For instance, the devotees they just listen to every single genre under the radar. The cool kids is a pretty large share of the market, and they're kind of responsible for driving, Drake, Rihanna, Future, all of these hip hop and R&B artists that are doing really well are kind of largely driven by the cool kids. I was happy because we have a typing tool that we can send around where you can actually take the quiz and figure out which one you are. I was happy that I was a cool kid because that has not been the case until now. So if you want to move over, we're going to highlight a little bit some of the two of the audiences.
Yeah, one other thing which I want to add here is everyone asks about music super fans, right? But everyone is a super fan in their own right. It's just about identifying the way to monetize every type of fan, like a devotee or a ghost listener. There are different ways to monetize them. It's just to find the most ideal way to reach that audience.
Cool. Yeah. So the devotees, they're a unique audience. They're kind of like your audiophile. They are a little bit more male skewing. They're a little bit more Gen X. They're a little bit more belong to the LGBTQ community. They spend the most time with Music Weekly. They listen to, like I said, genres across the board. These are they're also very interested in physical formats. And so these are kind of when I alluded to, it's not just Gen Z buying vinyl. There's also this kind of like weird Gen X guy buying vinyl. That's kind of what the devotee is here. And they're about 8% of the overall music listenership. Then the cool kids, this is what I was assigned. They tend to be younger. They tend to be more women. They tend to be more Black or African American. They listen to a lot of hip hop, R&B. Their favorite artists are the artists that consistently top the charts. They're a little bit more disproportionately likely to use free streaming service. And then, as I mentioned earlier, where Snapchat kind of pops, Snapchat pops for these guys as well. Then we also have, because of our artist and genre tracker, we're able to take that segmentation and bring it over to what artists they like, and we were able to use this to develop a playlist. It's not necessarily generated on their like Spotify listenership, but it's based on what they tell us they like to listen to as far as artists go. And you can see the devotees, their genre preferences being wide. They like a lot of world music. Bjork is also one that popped. Bjork is very avant-garde and is actually there's a lot of love for Bjork, and then there's also a lot of people who don't really love Bjork. So the devotees, they're going to give her the benefit of the doubt there. And then the cool kids, obviously, these are your hip hop and R&B artists, Kendrick, Doja. Then we also saw Nirvana. I thought this was really funny, so we threw it in. Nirvana over-indexes among this audience, and so we put "This Smells Like Teen Spirit" on the playlist just because, Gen Z loves like 90s stuff. And then I wanted to touch briefly, I'll try and do this quickly, about my process for moving, because I moved over from a completely separate industry, my process for moving over to the music industry. I initially started with, and also I want to qualify this with survivorship bias. Whenever you hear people talk about their path, it is anecdotal, right? There is no one path to success. And so I just really want to qualify that. But this was my process, and hopefully it's helpful. Step one, I went to the Measure Music Conference. So that was a good one. The first step was I kind of researched the industry high level. Who are the major stakeholders? Learned all about the major labels, DSPs, what radio's role is, all that stuff. You want to figure out where the revenue streams are, where the growth is, whether that's global or in whatever, in all facets. Second, I kind of tried to figure out how my skill set worked in there, and consumer research is something that I've been doing for a while. So I started trying to find people who do consumer research. There aren't a lot actually in the music industry because a lot of people have pivoted to analytics, which I have opinions on, but because the political people did the same thing about a decade ago and they pivoted back to research. But I identified what role I had, what I could play, what skills I could bring. I also make music, but lo and behold, I did not think that that was going to be the path for me to get into the music industry. So I found that I was going to be a research analyst, and I tried to find avenues to get in that way. Then I honed my research specifically on specific organizations and hiring managers that work in this space that I could do informational interviews. One of those is actually David Boyle, who might be on here. He actually introduced me to the Measure of Music conference, and I was aware of Luminate. It was at the time, and so after the Measure of Music, then I was able to get in front of somebody, and we were able to have a conversation about bringing me on board. Yeah, David's great. And then that's part of the networking with intention. When you, after you research the specific orgs and the hiring managers, when you reach out to people, don't just reach out to some guy in the music industry and say, I want to work in the music industry. Say, hey, I want to talk to you about my skill set. You do the same thing. I want to figure out ways that, like, how I can maneuver that. And so through those processes, it was about a six month to a year long process that I decided I want to move over, is how long it took. And then I actually didn't do this for the music industry, but one thing I did a lot in politics, if I want to get somebody's attention, was to do a custom analysis, maybe even a hackathon, to add credibility, to say, I know a little bit about this industry. I have some curiosity, and maybe this analysis helps you in some way, shape, or form. So sorry for time, but we can open it up to questions.
Yes.
I think we had one from the chat. Ikechi asks, what efforts are being made to gain data insights from emerging markets in Africa apart from South Africa?
Great question. So research is obviously been front and center for us. So we did research in South Africa last year. We also went to Egypt, and then this year we're entering Nigeria and Kenya. It can be sometimes challenging with newer markets just to find the right people to take these sort of surveys. You want to make sure you get enough number of people to have a readable base in certain markets, but we are making those strides, and we are entering to new markets this year.
Cool. And another one from Veronica. How large was the sample size of the survey respondents for the data represented in the results?
Great question. We have this all the time. And sometimes the inputs that we get is that, hey, how can you use a 4,000 respondent sample size to talk about a population of 300 million? I know we just have a minute, but when it comes to statistical sort of techniques, there's always going to be a margin of error, but a sample size of 4,000 is more than enough to get that margin of error down to, I believe it's 2%. Grant, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes. And then subgroups, it varies based on the subgroup, but yeah, you can, if your sample is drawn in a representative population, you can make reasonably strong inferences using even 200 people. Not saying you should do that, but you can.
Exactly. Like if you spend thousands of dollars to get insights into what you do, eventually spend millions on, there's going to be a lot of savings, and all of it sort of adds up over time.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. This was really excellent, Grant. It's wonderful to see you on this side of things. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much. What I was also going to flag for our participants, you'll actually have access to the Luminate Music Connect database for the weekend working your projects, as well as the API. So when people ask about, when Chartmetric mentioned they didn't have streaming numbers, that's where you guys will get your streaming information from. So it should be very exciting to have that additional bit to add to your projects. And on that note, I'm going to let Grant and Joywyn go, and we're going to get up for our next panel.